Hi everyone, and welcome to this masterclass on applications, assessment centres and interviews. This is another one of our masterclasses from our busy autumn season, and we have a great panel here today, as you can see. So please do get involved in the conversation, submit your questions via the Q&A tool, and we will ask those throughout the session. We always start our Practice masterclasses with our learning outcomes. So by the end of today's session, I hope that you will all have a better understanding of what law firm recruiters are looking for in applications, feel more confident about the application process, understand how you can impress at assessment centres and during interviews, and know how to tailor your application better. Before we get going, I'm just going to quickly go over some key things. So as I mentioned, firstly, please do use the online Q&A tool, and I'll be posing your questions to the speakers as we go. You can also use this tool to let the LCN team know if you have any audio or visual problems, and they'll be able to help you through that. This masterclass will be recorded, so you will have a link to the recording sent to you after the session tomorrow, and it will be available on our YouTube channel very shortly as well. Please feel free to shout about the masterclass on social media, tag us, tag the firms, tag the recruiters as well. And just a reminder that we have lots of fantastic masterclasses coming up over the rest of the term as well. Head to LCN's event page to check those out. Our next one's on the 23rd of October and is all about understanding what life is like as an M&A lawyer. Towards the end of the month as well, we have one on commercial awareness. So if you're looking to develop your commercial awareness skills, don't miss that one. And then applications for our exclusive legal careers conferences, Law Careers Net Live, are open until the 30th of October. So if you're thinking of applying, you still have time. The events, just as a reminder, are jam-packed with law firm networking, partner and trainee panels, interactive workshops, and lots more. A pop-up should be showing up on your screen now with a link where you can find out more and apply. And we look forward to reading your applications. Okay, I'm going to start by just asking all of our attendees to answer the question on the screen. So first up, what part of the application process worries you the most? So is it researching firms and opportunities, writing and submitting the application, the assessment centre, or the interview? And we will be covering all of these elements today. Just give you a couple more seconds while a few of you click through. Cool, I'm going to end that there. Share the results. So most people writing and submitting the application and the assessment centre seem to be the ones that are causing most worries, but a few people worried about researching firms and the interview itself as well. And then next up, just want to find out what stage you are at. So are you a first-year law student, second-year law student, third-year law student, non-law student, postgraduate, or in work? Again, just give you a few seconds to fill those out. You can see lots of postgraduate people. So majority postgrad, but a few from each stage there. That's really helpful. Thank you. So to get us started, I'm just going to get the panelists to introduce themselves. So Hannah, if we start with you, please.
Yep. Hi, everyone. My name's Hannah Kirrane. I'm the Early Careers Recruitment Manager covering the UK for Clyde Co.
Thank you. And Rosie.
Hey, everyone. I'm Rosie. I'm the Early Careers Manager at Dentons.
Fabulous. And Zoe.
Hi, I'm Zoe. I'm the Senior Graduate Recruitment Manager at Osborne Clarke.
And Egil.
Thank you. Yeah, my name's Egil Blindheim. I'm the Early Careers Manager for Watson Farley in the UK.
Amazing. Thank you all very much. So just sticking with you, Egil, I think that one of the big questions lots of people want the answer to is what actually can make an application stand out. So if you could just share like a whistle stop of what you're looking for in a standout application.
Sure. So for background, Watson Farley Williams is a sector-focused firm. So a lot of our recruitment process will be around that and asking questions around which sector applicants are interested in. So making sure that you really understand what the firm does, what kind of sectors or industries that they operate in is important. And then being able to link that into maybe what we've done or what you're interested in is key, because what we're primarily looking for at the application stage is that alignment between what you're looking for in your career and what we can offer.
And then, Zoe, how should candidates approach researching firms? We had that on the poll just now about one of the things that people are a bit worried about. What would your advice be there?
Yeah, so I think it's really important for candidates to understand what firms actually do in terms of the legal services that they provide, the sectors they work in, and the kind of clients that they're working with, so that they can really make sure that their applications are tailored to each of the firms that they're applying to. And it's really important that they do wider research as well, so not just relying on firm websites, but also looking on other resources like directories, speaking to people to find out what it's like to work within the firm, so that they've got that really good understanding before they go on to submit an application.
Obviously, just following up from that, we're in lawfare season. When students are coming up to speak to you, then would you recommend them mentioning people that they've spoken to at fairs, or is there anything they can do with their application in that sense following lawfairs?
Yeah, it's really important to keep following up. So, if you are going to mention somebody that you've spoken to or a particular interaction, it's really important that you say why that interaction was so important to you. So not just name dropping and including it for the sake of it, but really going into detail as to why that particular point resonated with you. What did that person say that really inspired you to apply? So always making sure that there's that connection there.
Asking that kind of, I guess, so what question, like, so
Yeah.
what, why have you popped that in? Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
And then I suppose part of that research process, Rosie, is understanding the firm's recruitment process. Why is it important for candidates to understand the process firstly, and what's the best way for them to find that information out?
So I think the way to find out is probably all those bits that Zoe mentioned there, and then probably the firm's website for this one is the best place to go. Most firms will have their process there. They might have helpful videos. Their social media might also have sort of helpful hints and tips for the process. So definitely go straight to the source when you're trying to find out the process. And I think why it's important, a couple of reasons. First, logistical. So thinking about timings, when firm deadlines are they recruiting on a rolling basis? All those bits will help you plan your time, because obviously applications take a lot of time and you have to balance that with everything else you've got going on. And then I think the other side of why it's important is to understand what the firm is looking for and what's going to be expected of you, so you can prepare as much as possible. There's no surprises along the way. And also, I guess the other logistical piece is there anything they need with your application? So some firms might ask for a specific type of document, that sort of thing, and you just want to have it all ready before you get going.
And then I would also just bit of a shameless plug here, but just shout about looking at the Meet the Recruiter profiles on Law Careers Net. There's lots of information about the recruitment processes there, and also the Vacation Scheme Insiders offer a little glimpse into the recruitment process at various firms, so worth having a look at those. And then, Hannah, just on the timeline, we have lots of questions always about when people should be applying. What should the approach be depending on stage? So like first year law students, second year non-law students, that sort of thing. When should aspiring lawyers start making vacation scheme and training applications?
I guess it sort of links to what Rosie's just talked about as well, sort of doing the research on each firm. Different firms can have quite different eligibility. I don't think we necessarily make it very simple for students. It does require a bit of sort of research and checking what the eligibility and stages are. I'd say generally it's sort of penultimate year onwards for vacation schemes and then training contracts. But we have an opportunity for first year students that can lead into vacation schemes. Other firms may, recruit various vacation schemes at different stages, sort of targeting maybe graduates or, for their spring and winter vac schemes. So it does require a bit of research and sort of really checking what the eligibility is. But I think, once you're in your sort of penultimate year, second year, definitely there will be quite a lot of opportunities available to have a look at and apply for.
Yeah, brilliant. And I think it's always easy to compare yourself to what other people are doing around you as well. So I think just like taking a step back and having your own plan is always key. We've touched on this slightly, but Egil, I wondered if you could shed some light on how candidates should maybe organise their time when they're completing various applications. And I suppose to that same question, it could be very tempting to apply to 50 odd firms because you feel like you want to have the best chance, but perhaps that isn't the best approach.
No, you're absolutely right. I think firstly, to the points that have been raised already, checking out websites, figuring out when deadlines are. A question we often get is, do you recruit on a rolling basis? So people are trying to figure out whether we close applications early. For Watson Farley, we don't. We do absolutely welcome early applications. And I think that's a good thing to bear in mind as well. Don't always leave it up till the deadline. Make sure that you are spacing out the applications. I think most vac scheme deadlines will be in January, so putting aside a week or two per application would often be good. A good application might take a lot more work than most people realise as well, and it's better to spend a few extra hours on fewer applications rather than trying to apply for loads of different firms and hoping that ultimately you'll get there. For me, the ideal number, what I'm hearing is kind of around 10 applications per cycle. I know of people who've done a lot more than that, but it can often take 2 weeks from starting the research for a law firm until you submit your application. So balancing that and coursework or work or other things you might have going on in your life is a lot. So limiting the number, being quite selective about the kind of firms you're applying to, and making sure that your motivation for them is clear will make it a lot easier for you to submit a good application, and it will make it a lot easier to juggle those deadlines as well.
Fab, thank you. And just a reminder for all attendees to have a look at the training contract and vacation scheme deadline pages on LCN, where you will find a list of firms' deadlines that are coming up over the next few months, including the big one, as Egil said, in January. So please do take a look at that, plan your time accordingly, as Egil suggested as well, and make sure you're giving yourself enough time between writing your application, reading it again, and submitting it. Before we move on to the next section, I just want to have a look at some of the questions that have been sent in already. We've already got quite a few. Rosie, I wondered if I could come to you for this first one. So as a first year non-law student, somebody has asked, what should I be doing at this stage?
Yeah, well, it's great you're engaged so early on. That puts you in a really great position. And I think for you at this stage, so anybody before they're eligible to apply for vacation schemes and training contracts, I think the key is to get as much exposure as you can to different firms and the different type of work they do. So attend events, virtual, in person, law fairs, do lots of research, listen to podcasts, things like that. And I would say just throw yourself into things, even if you think that's not the type of firm you're interested in. It's always worth going, even if that helps you rule it out or understand what you are interested in. So just try and do as many things that you can as possible. There's loads of free to access things out there to give yourself kind of a good grounding. So then when it comes to making applications in the future, you can make a shortlist and you'll have really good reasons why you're choosing those firms. But also save some time to just enjoy university, settling in, and all of those things as well.
Yeah, sounds like they're ahead of the game.
Yeah.
Fab. And we have someone asking a question about past grades. So they're a second year law student and they got a distinction plus in their law at A level, but the other two options weren't the best, even though they're now getting a high 2-1 after first year. So they're worried about whether their past grades might overshadow other achievements. So Hannah, I wonder if that's one that you could speak to.
Yep, sure. I mean, I think most law firms have a, grade requirements that they look at, but I think everybody, will say to provide mitigating circumstances or, provide extra information on your application form. I won't comment on a specific example, but I would just say to have a look at everybody's eligibility on their website. Generally, they'll sort of advise to list that, and it would all be considered in context. We used like RARE's contextual recruitment system, for example, and take into context if COVID was happening at that time, etc. For us, we have a variety of programs as well. So our back schemes and training contracts generally are AAB. Whereas we do have like the Paralegal Academy, which is BBC or equivalent. So there are other routes and other options as well that, don't feel too limited by past grades. Everything should be looked at in context.
Fab. And then just off the back of that, someone else has asked about how to approach mitigating circumstances and how much detail to go into. So is it kind of a case of providing all of the facts, or should it be kind of short, concise, even if it, like, there are obviously lots of other elements to kind of add into that? Who's happy to, I don't know who's happy to answer that, Hannah, maybe?
I mean, from my point of view, as much as you're happy to provide on your application form, I appreciate sometimes it could be quite personal circumstances. So, please do, for us anyway, if you wrote on there that you'd rather have a phone call or you wanted to email in and talk about something, we could absolutely do it that way as well. So the more information you can provide, the better it is for us when we're at the screening stage. But equally, if it's something quite personal, you'd rather have a phone call, that's absolutely fine too.
Fabulous, thank you very much. So we've spoken about research, and obviously having a good understanding of the firm. Rosie, what else are you looking for in an application?
I think there are a few things that are probably universal to firms. So getting the basics right, the spelling and grammar, but also the structure of your answers. Firms will be reviewing a lot of applications. So if you can make it nice and clear for them to understand what you're saying and how you're putting it across, that's really helpful. And then I think this goes back to doing your research on the specific firms and looking at their values and if they share it, what they're looking for in candidates, and reflecting that in your form. A lot of that will come from the questions that the firm are asking. They'll be angled towards what they're interested in and what's important to them. But yeah, important to have an understanding of that firm's values, the work they do, and the skills that they're looking for in their future lawyers, alongside all those basics around, as I said, the structure, grammar, things like that.
Rosie mentioned some of the key skills there, Zoe. What are some of the skills that you want to see evidence of from an application?
Yeah, so it's going to be different for different firms. And as Rosie said, really looking at the values and the information that the firm is providing on their website around future talent and trying to align your skill set with that. But from our perspective, we look for a breadth of different skills, and I wouldn't expect every candidate to come to us with exactly the same blend of skills. So it's really important that they showcase themselves. So that authenticity is absolutely key. So instead of giving really poor examples to try and shoehorn yourself into that particular mold, it's really important that you're authentic and showcase the strongest skills that align with the direction that the firm is going in. So I think you mentioned earlier, everyone's in the same race, but you need to run your own race and not focus on what other people are doing and what other people are saying in their application forms. So yeah, identify your own strengths and weaknesses and be true to those in the process.
And lots of those strengths and weaknesses will be obviously evidenced and identified through work experience opportunities. Rosie, just coming back to you quickly, what work experience examples do you want to see, and should candidates be talking about? Should it just be purely legal, or do you want to see a mix of legal and non-legal?
Yes, good question. So we would look at everything, and I think we all understand how difficult it can be to get legal work experience prior to a vacation scheme. So that's definitely not a prerequisite for making applications. And the key thing with work experience is to think about the transferable skills you've developed in all the different experiences you've had. That could be paid work experience, it could be summer work or work in retail, things like that, but it could also be volunteering, positions of responsibility in societies, and things like that. So it really can come from anywhere, but I think it's about, if you have a chance to write information in the work experience section, not just putting what your title was, but talking about key achievements and also the skills that you developed, and thinking back to, right, what are the firm looking for, or what are law firms looking for, and how can I reflect that in the experiences that I'm putting down. But I wouldn't ever self-select things out, even if you don't think they're relevant, because I'm sure there'll be lots of transferable skills that you can put across no matter what that experience was. And the other question I get on work experience quite a bit is, can I put open days or insight events in work experience? So different firms might have different approaches. For us, we're very happy for you to do sort of one work experience section and just call it open days, and like list the ones you've been to, or if you've done a week or a bit more substantial experience, that can be its own entry, but you're definitely free to pop them in there as well.
Brilliant, thank you. And Egil, do you have any other advice for candidates looking to share non-legal work experience?
Just echoing what Rosie said, absolutely put it in there. Non-legal work experience can often be the best way to gain and showcase a lot of the competencies that we look for. Communication, leadership, teamwork, those kind of things is a lot easier to build in a part-time job, for example, than it might be if you're shadowing in a law firm. So talking about it, making it clear in your work experience section that you've done it, set out what you've learned from that, and then talk about how you're hoping to take that into a legal career, showing you understand the importance of that skill as a trainee solicitor and later on as an associate can be really important. And don't be afraid to use that when it comes to competency questions in your application as well. Again, it can be really a really good way of really showing those skills that even when you're a trainee, you might not have the same opportunities to showcase and develop.
Yeah, and I think it's always so easy to kind of gloss over some of those skills as well. One of the things that we often advise students is to maybe think about creating a bank of skills and the evidence for those as you're going through like the process. And you might be have I don't know, if you're working in retail, for example, and have a day where you're having to deal with a tricky customer, but noting that down and how you dealt with it and the skills that were in play, because then it just becomes so much easier when you are then putting the application together. And then just sticking with you, Egil, what would you say is the most common mistake that you tend to see in applications that you think, oh no, not this again?
I think we've covered a lot of it already, talking about the importance of research and showing your understanding of the firm. So I'll talk more about the competencies and how people showcase those skills. A lot of the time, people are hesitant to talk about what they did in a group setting. So we see a lot of, we did this, or we thought we should be doing that, and this is the result that we got out of it. That's great. It shows you work in a team environment, but it's not actually talking about your contribution to that team or the group that you were in. So making sure that you're talking about specifically, I did this, or I thought we should take the initiative to do this, and this is how I got the team on board, is important. It's not you showing that you can't work with others, but it's you evidencing your role within that group. And importantly, it doesn't always have to be you leading a group or being the one talking the most. That collaboration piece is crucial, and you don't always have to be kind of the loud extrovert for that.
Brilliant, thank you. Just looking to the audience questions again, keep those coming in. There's so many good questions that I can see. Hannah, one for you perhaps. So we've got a postgrad student who's done the bar training course looking to switch to becoming a solicitor, and they've asked what should they be doing to stand out?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends what you want to apply for and which firm, and how you can link some of those skills. I mean, for us at Clyde Co, we don't sort of put extra preference on somebody have done a master's or a certain course beforehand. So the fact that, you know, you may have insight into a different way that the law is practiced is obviously going to be of benefit to you when talking about that at interviews, for example. So I think it's just familiarizing yourself in the same way that any candidate would, you know, researching law firms, researching the process and the competencies and strengths that we look for. So I think I wouldn't really approach it in a different way personally. But yeah, I think having extra knowledge is only ever going to be helpful, I think. And maybe in application forms or, you know, at interview stage, talking about why you chose that course and, you know, what on your path led you then back to sort of looking at solicitor and different types of firms like that.
Thank you. And then Zoe, someone has asked, in preparing responses to application questions, would you recommend to focus on recent examples of work experience? I think this is referring to. For instance, would you advise a career changer not to include an example that may either be non-law or that may be from a couple of years ago?
So within work experience, I think trying to include as much as you can that's relevant, that showcases skills development and transferable skills. So setting yourself up for success as a commercial lawyer. In terms of answering competency questions, I would always say try to use more recent examples. It's fine to allude to the starting point. So if that was a career however many years ago, then, you know, that's the starting point. But we're really looking for continued progression and continued development. So trying to use more recent examples will be beneficial.
Fabulous. And then Zoe, someone has asked, how would you suggest making sure applications are firm specific, especially considering how lots of firms have great overlap in their practice areas?
Yeah, so I think trying to get out and meet people from the firm is a really good way of just understanding at a deeper level what the firm is looking to achieve from a strategy perspective. You'll get a lot more from interacting with people and asking questions than you will just by reading the website. So having those interactions will really help you to firm up in your own mind what it is about firm X over firm Y, and you can start to differentiate that way, would be my top tip for doing that.
Fabulous. Thank you. And then Rosie, just coming to you, someone's asked about when describing their work history, should they tailor it to the firm, or should they only be doing that in an attaching cover letter?
Yes, good question. So I think, as I mentioned, it's important with the work experience to pull out the key skills you've developed, and they probably won't change, and lots of firms will be looking at some overlapping pieces. So for the most part, I would imagine you can use similar blurbs for your work experience, but it's definitely worth giving them a look over, looking at the firm's values and seeing if you've missed anything off that you want to add in. But the skills you develop will be the skills you developed on the work experience. So for the most part, I imagine it will look similar for different firms. But just check when you're reading the work experience question for the firm, and for all the questions, make sure you read for nuance. So are they asking you to talk about a certain skill or apply it to their firm, those sorts of things. So just make sure you're reading it really carefully.
Brilliant, thank you. And just hopping back to the questions here that I've got. So Zoe, how can candidates demonstrate that they have good commercial awareness in their applications?
Yeah, so this is a common one that we get asked when we're at events. And I think, first of all, coming back to Rosie's point that she just made, you know, it's really important that you read the question that you're being asked and answer that question, not a question that you want to answer. And then connecting the commercial points into that, it's showing that you understand how what's going on in the world is having an effect on the decisions that businesses are making, and appreciating that law firms themselves are businesses as well. So if you are doing your research, you know, reading around commercial issues, business issues, what's going on in the world, political landscape, etc., should be an important part of your research, so that when you come to those commercial awareness questions that are often very specific, you've got lots of information in your back pocket to be able to apply to that scenario so that you can answer it fully. So yeah, that would be my advice when it comes to commercial questions.
Brilliant, thank you. And then Egil, one of the questions that we've seen cropping up a lot more recently, or perhaps a hot topic, what is your advice for students that are perhaps considering using AI in their applications?
Different firms will have very different approaches to this. I know there are firms out there who are actively encouraging their applicants to use AI when writing applications, but check the application before you do that. We ask that applicants looking to any of our opportunities don't use AI to generate their answers. We do have Copilot and those kind of legal tech tools if you were to come in, but we want to see your kind of those drafting skills before you get here. The other thing to bear in mind is if you do use AI, irrespective of the firm, just making sure that it's not giving you inaccurate information. So we opened our applications last week, and we've had quite a lot of open day applications through where people are talking about an interest in this in one of our sectors that just doesn't exist, which seems to be something that's coming from ChatGPT. So just if you do use prompts like that to do an initial draft for you, make sure you do fact check it, because obviously if you're submitting something like that and you say you're really interested in joining us because of a team that does something that we don't, it doesn't look particularly good.
Thank you. Rosie, did you have anything to add to that?
I think exactly as was just said, it's best to research each firm and their approach, and different firms will have a policy around it. At Dentons, we're very happy for candidates to use AI as a helpful tool, but as Egil mentioned, but stress that every application should reflect that candidate's experiences, their skills and motivations. So it can be useful to organise a response, improve clarity, help with prep, but it shouldn't be used to generate content or complete assessments that are meant to showcase your individuality. And typically firms really value authenticity. We don't have like a tick list of things we look at. Lots of firms, including Dentons, we review every form by is a real person. There's no AI in the process at our end, and we are looking for unique perspectives rather than sort of generic AI generated ones. So it can be useful, but it's really important, as Egil said, to use it sensibly, not just use it to generate your answer, and that your authenticity comes across as well.
Brilliant, thank you. And just on that point, Hannah, we're often talking about candidates showcasing their authentic self, but what does that actually mean? And can you share an example of how a candidate may have done that successfully?
Yeah, sure. And I think it's worth just explaining that for Clyde Co, we don't have any written responses on our application form. So when it's a question we always get asked is, how do we stand out in an application, or, show our authentic self? I'll refer more to our online assessment stage, where we have a situational assessment and a video interview stage. But I think the same applies whether you're doing a written application or not. And Zoe and Rosie have sort of covered this as well in some of their answers, that we're not looking for the same type of person. We want to you to be your authentic self. Firms do better when they have a mix of ideas, a mix of people working for them, and it's just much more innovative. So there'll be skills that we'll all be looking for, but you don't necessarily all have that exact same skill set. People have different strengths in different areas. So don't try and shoehorn answers in, and don't try and feel like you're trying to fit yourself into a mold. I think being as genuine as possible. So in terms of examples, if you're having to answer why you're interested in a firm or what strengths you're bringing, if you've done your research and you've actually got an interest in that firm, you should sort of know what it is that's appealing to you. That is it, the culture, is it certain things that they're doing there, the type of work or clients, and the strategy of what the firm's trying to do. It could be that your past experiences have given you skills that you feel that you're quite strong in certain areas that would help you as a trainee lawyer, for example. So it's all very personal to you. So when people say, what makes that stand out, you can't really give a set answer. It sort of comes across as more passionate and authentic. So for us at like video interview stage, if someone seems quite enthusiastic when they're answering and it comes quite naturally and it all flows and it doesn't feel like it's regurgitated from the website, that kind of gives us the insight that they do generally feel passionate about this, and this is them being authentic in their answer.
Brilliant, thank you so much. Egil, would you agree with that? Is there anything else that you might recommend?
I agree with all of it. The difference is we do have the long form application questions, and it does give applicants the opportunity to talk about authenticity. I think the one piece that Hannah touched upon that is crucial for our applications is around that authentic motivation. So the first application question with us, if you apply for a training contract or vacation scheme this year, is which one of our sectors are you most interested in and why? If you can authentically talk about that, and you can talk about experiences you might have had, you might have grown up around certain things that made you interested, that can ground that motivation, and it can show that it's not just an impressive answer you've managed to come up with in the 3 weeks you've researched the firm, but it's something that comes from something you've been interested in for a long time, and that will make it a lot easier when you then hopefully make it through for example, partner interview as well. If you're talking about something you're genuinely interested in and passionate about, it will come across. It will obviously look more authentic, but I also think it's bearing in mind that if there's a disconnect there between who you are as your authentic self and what the particular law firm is saying that they're looking for, that could be just that they're not right for you. It doesn't necessarily mean that you wouldn't make a great lawyer somewhere, but if you're struggling to get that across and get your authenticity and your personality in, and you struggle to see how that would fit in that firm, that might be one of the things to look for when you're applying, and it kind of emphasizes that importance of finding a culture that you feel comfortable in.
Brilliant, thank you so much. And just moving on to the assessment centre vacation scheme part of the process. Zoe, what is an assessment centre and what can candidates expect to kind of experience from one?
Yeah, so essentially an assessment centre is a day where you will be assessed against a variety of different exercises for a variety of different skills. So they could be virtual assessment centres or in person, but typically an assessment centre will involve group exercises, interviews, psychometric testing, perhaps written exercises, negotiation. So you should expect for quite a full-on day, but they're normally really enjoyable and get you to showcase your skills in a variety of different ways.
Brilliant, thank you. And Hannah, how important is the firm's vacation scheme as part of your recruitment process? Are you recruiting trainees directly from that, or how does that work?
Yeah, so at Clyde Co, it's definitely a huge part of our process. The vast majority of our trainees do come through the vacation scheme routes. Predominantly, that was summer vacation schemes, sort of targeting penultimate final year students, but we have got a spring vacation scheme next year, looking at final year and graduate students. We do this because we think it's not just good from the firm's perspective that you get to know the candidates and they can showcase their skills, across the 2 weeks. But also from a candidate, future trainee perspective, they get to know the firm really well, and potentially they might do multiple VAC schemes or, be weighing up their options. They get to see if Clyde & Co is the type of firm they want to train at, it's the type of work that they want to do. So it sort of works both ways. It's a sort of good way of assessing and getting to know whether that is the firm you want to do your training contract at.
Brilliant, thank you. And then Rosie, how can successful applicants prepare for the assessment centres, group tasks, and those written exercises?
I think the first thing is to make sure you understand what's included in the assessment centre, what to prepare, and again, if the firm shares it, what they're looking for. That helps you know what to go in with. It can also help with nerves and things like that, and how to prepare. Sometimes you won't know exactly what the exercise is on, so you can't exactly practice the questions or anything like that, but you can understand the format and the competencies that are being looked for. Another thing I'd always recommend before any assessment centre is to go back over your application form, reread through why you applied to that firm, the skills that you talked about, all of those sorts of pieces. And then commercial awareness is often a key thing at an assessment centre. There'll usually be a commercial exercise, whether it's a group or a case study. So refresh yourself on that firm. Their practice areas is a really good thing to refresh yourself on, and what do those practice areas do, because they might come up in the exercises. And also, is there anything going on in the world at the moment that's really big in the commercial awareness space that you should be aware of? So being prepared in terms of understanding what to expect, brushing up on your commercial awareness for that firm specifically, and reminding yourself all the things that you've already researched in your application form are probably a few good things to do before you go in.
I mean, just sticking with you there, when would those sorts of details be shared with candidates?
Different for every firm. Normally there'll be a little something on their website for everybody to read about, sort of the format of the assessment day, things like that. And then we would normally, a week before, and I'm sure lots of firms do something similar, share a briefing with further information and information on how to prepare. If it's virtual, what kind of tech you need to have ready, or if it's in person, where you're going and when you need to be there. And even those basic things about, making sure your tech's working, that you have a quiet space if it's virtual, or you know how you're going to get to the office are really important.
Fab, thank you very much. And then, Egil, what skills or behaviours are you looking for and assessing during group exercises or case studies?
Good question. For us, we tell you on the day as well, so we will remind everyone before they go into an exercise, and I'm sure most firms will tell you, look, this is what we're doing next, this is what we would be looking for. But for group exercises, it's communication, it's collaboration skills, it's also analytical skills. I think when you go into group exercise, it's quite easy to remember to ask questions of everyone else, show that you're actively listening to what they're bringing to the table, trying to encourage people to take part in the conversation. But what can happen is, if you're focusing too much on what everyone else is saying, it's often hard to showcase the analytical skills. So making sure that you're bringing ideas to the table, that you're providing suggestions as well, is really important when it comes to the group exercise. And then for case studies and written elements, attention to detail obviously is a huge one. Written communication skills, and one for us that without giving too much away, that ability to juggle deadlines is going to be important as well.
Thank you very much. Zoe, we spoke a little bit about how candidates might let themselves down in the application form, so in terms of spelling and getting a firm name right and that sort of thing. What's one way that you notice candidates kind of letting themselves down during an assessment centre?
Yeah, so usually it's due to a lack of engagement. So it could be, as you said, a lack of engagement with a group exercise and a very limited contribution, or very superficial or thin answers given during an interview. We all know that assessment centres and interviews are really nerve-wracking situations, but candidates need to learn how to use that nervous energy to drive their performance, not send them inside their shell. So as much as they can practice being in those kind of environments, using career services, etc., for mock interviews, doing online simulations, just so that they're more familiar and more confident coming into the situation, should help to mitigate some of these things that we see.
Fabulous, thank you. And I feel like we've covered this, Rosie, but I wondered whether there was anything else that you think would be worth sharing on what candidates can do to impress during the assessment centre or on a week-long vacation scheme, for example.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's been covered for the assessment centre, but for the vacation scheme, it probably covers assessment centres too. We're not looking for people to be a finished product. The whole point of a training contract or, any of these programmes are to develop as you go. So the ability to take feedback on board is important, and to be open to feedback in developing. So even in an assessment centre, for example, in one of our commercial exercises, our assessors might prompt you to go in a certain direction, or say, oh, that wasn't what we were thinking, but what about this, and help you. And they're looking to see if you can sort of take that feedback on board and develop as you go. And that's particularly key in a vacation scheme. And then more vacation scheme specific, I think, is just throwing yourself into everything. So even if you think you won't be able to contribute to a client call, just sitting in and listening, attending events, or if someone asks if you want to grab a coffee, if you have time, saying yes, and just making the most of the opportunity. Because as mentioned, you're not supposed to be the finished product. I'm not sure any of us ever are, but you're supposed to learn and develop and be enthusiastic. So any way you can show that is really helpful.
Fabulous, thank you very much. And just looking at some of the questions from the audience again, we've got a question from someone who has asked, do firms, so open to all of you, do firms sponsor international students for VAC schemes? Egil? No?
No.
I think lots of firms won't, but you should look at your student visa and see. Sometimes you can attend a scheme within term time if it's outside of the study time, so in the Easter holidays and things like that. So it's definitely worth checking your visa. But I think a lot of firms won't sponsor anything outside of your existing visa for a vacation scheme, but lots of firms will for a training contract. And I think, again, best just to ask the specific firm.
Perfect. And then someone else has asked, just sticking on vacation schemes, Hannah, maybe one for you. Someone said, how best is it to talk about past vacation schemes that maybe a candidate has been unsuccessful in converting into a training contract? Does that kind of reflect badly on the applicant, or is it still good to talk about and show that you've learned from those experiences?
Yeah, I think I would, see that as long as you can say like what you've done since then or what you've learned from it. So, we have people that, are unsuccessful on the vacation scheme, but it's not because they've necessarily been poor. It's been that they've just needed to work on a certain skill or strength, and with time and experience that often comes. So I think it's great that you've already had that experience and you'll have been able to take a lot of learnings from it. So I think just being able to really explain what you've learned personally, what you've worked on, how you've sort of built on those skills, and what you think you would be able to do differently will definitely be good thinking about future vacation schemes and applications.
Brilliant, thank you. And then Zoe, somebody has asked about the critical thinking assessments. Is there any kind of insight or advice that you can provide on those?
Yeah, so with any kind of psychometric test, it's really important that you take the preparation phase really seriously. So approach it as if it was an exam. So revise, so prepare, do practice tests. Make sure you've got enough time to be able to do the test fully, that you're not rushing, and that you're in a quiet environment. All of those things will really help and have a positive impact on your performance.
Brilliant, thank you. And then just moving on to the interview section. So Egil, coming to you first, how should candidates prepare for an interview?
Good question. I think primarily bearing in mind that you've done really well getting to interview. Most candidates are rejected if we get there, and I think just kind of trying to keep that in the back of your mind to kind of help settle those nerves a little bit can often be a good thing. Apart from that, go back over your application to refresh your memory on why you're applying to the firm, what attracted you to them initially, and also because sometimes, depending on the firm, partners might have your application in front of them. Especially if you've mentioned a particular deal that made you interested in the firm, just making sure you swat up on that before you go in, because you could be sitting in front of a partner who led on that deal. So if you've mentioned it in your application and you said, this is the one thing that really got me interested in the firm, this is why I'm here today, and they start going into detail about it, you want to be prepared for that. Apart from that, it's about doing more research, so going through the directories, going on LCN, finding out more things about the firm, reaching out to trainees can often be a good thing as well. Just be mindful of the way you do it and the way you ask the questions. Don't expect an answer from them, and definitely not straight away. But if you go about it in the right way, you take an interest in how they found the firm and what they think you should be doing, then a lot of people are happy to talk to you. But just doing more research and freshening up on what you've already told the firm is probably the most important thing.
Thank you. And Hannah, while a candidate may have done all that research and prepared in that way, how can you tell when a candidate has prepared well for the interview? What are the kind of key signs?
Well, I think some of it is from a practical sense, being just, you want to be less nervous than you possibly can be. So any advice that the firm has given you ahead of time, make sure you have read that, planned your route to the office if it's in person. For us, we do a candidate workshop the week before. So if you can join that, you'll sort of get more insight into the interview and assessment centre. So just feeling like you feel sure going into it and can relax yourself as much as possible. Egil's already sort of covered the research side of it, I would say, but you're pretty much guaranteed going into an interview that you're going to be asked about your motivations. You might not be sure on the other questions that are going to come up or how they might be phrased, but I think that element, you should really have that honed down and really sort of be able to fully explain why you're passionate about this firm, why this particular program. And that's something that stands out for us, that a lot of people can read the website and have really an interest in the firm in general, but if it's a Scottish vacation scheme, for example, or a Bristol training contract, to really speak about that office and the work that they're doing in that area. So sort of preparing on that, those sorts of questions are going to come up.
Thank you very much. And Rosie, coming to you for the next one, how do you assess a candidate's understanding of the firm's values and culture? We spoke about obviously doing that research, but how can you tell when someone has got a good understanding of that and what you're looking for?
Usually most interviews have a question as simple as sort of, why have you decided to apply to this firm, or why is this firm one that you're interested in? Or sometimes it could be a bit more nuanced, what is it about the practice areas we have or the culture? So there'll normally be a straightforward question asking that. And again, it's looking that you've done your research beyond just the website and done a little bit more digging, spoken to people or attended events and have specific examples. So for example, lots of firms will talk about innovation, but can you go into detail about how that firm actually shows that value? Have they done anything specific in that area that you can talk about to show it's not just a generic answer? And then I think, again, as we said before, linking it back to yourself. So how do you reflect that value and why is it important to you, is a really important step in answering those questions.
Thanks very much. Zoe, what is your advice for candidates trying to tackle competency-based interview questions?
Yeah, so there's a structure for competency-based questions that you can use to help prepare. So ahead of an interview, think about some of the examples that you might want to talk about in your interview and use the STAR method. So breaking it down into the situation, the task, the action. So referring back to Egil's point earlier, what did you do? What was your contribution? And then the result and reflections and learning points. So if you've got those examples in your back pocket, they may or may not come up, but at least you've reflected on the experiences that you've had and really thought about the strengths that you want to put across in the interview. So you'll feel more prepared and on the front foot going into your interview.
Thank you. And then just off the back of that, Hannah, I think your focus is strength-based interview questions. What is your advice for candidates on those?
Yeah, so we use strengths-based for sort of all our external applicants and competency for, say, paralegals applying for opportunities internally. For strengths-based, and for those that might not be familiar, I guess the difference is, rather than competency sort of saying, tell me a time when you've done something, it's more, if you were in this situation, how would you do it? So it's more hypothetical and doesn't rely on you having examples. That being said, if you have examples of any experience at all, feel free to still include them. But yeah, it's harder to use maybe like the STAR method and have that set structure. But I'd still typical, interview advice of making sure you've fully understood the question that they've asked and not just sort of try and shoehorn an answer in. So if you want them to repeat it back and give you some time to think about it, that's definitely recommended. And really just think about giving a full answer. So what would you do in that situation? Explaining why you would do something, what you'd hope the outcome would be, maybe why you wouldn't take a different method, and trying to give a really full explanation to that answer.
Brilliant, thank you very much. And I think often in interviews there are likely to be questions that candidates don't maybe know the answer to. Zoe, what's your advice there? How should candidates approach a question that they don't know the answer to?
Yeah, and there are always in interviews going to be questions that you don't know the answer to, or that are not anticipated in your preparation. But all we can ask is that you give it a go. So if you're not sure, feel free to ask for clarification on what the interviewers are looking for. It's okay to say, can I have a moment to think about that, please? Take a sip of water, try to relax, and then give a really good answer after taking that pause. But all we can ask is that you give it your best shot.
Brilliant, thank you. Rosie, are you able to share an example of maybe like a tough interview question that you've asked in the past?
Yeah, I think luckily you don't really see people asking those really horrible questions like what's your favorite biscuit and ones like that, really random ones. But I think the questions that sometimes candidates find hardest are ones that maybe they haven't prepared for, that have a little bit of it could seem negative. So questions like, tell me about a time you've made a mistake, or you haven't been able to overcome a challenge, or tell me about a time your organizational skills have let you down, things that are not naturally prepared for potentially. And I think the key for those questions is just to answer honestly and think about what they're looking for. So in those kinds of questions, typically what a firm would be looking for is that you can take responsibility, demonstrate resilience, and apply lessons learned to the future, because we all make mistakes, especially as we're training. So really important to, again, take a pause when you're asked those difficult questions and think about why it's being asked and just give a really honest answer.
Brilliant, thank you very much. I'm just conscious of the time. I've never quite seen as many questions from the audience come in before, so I know we have a few more that we had on our list, but I think I'd quite like to just hop over into the audience questions. So Hannah, one for you. Does being in a specific university affect a candidate's application? For example, if they go to a non-Russell Group uni, or is their application as a whole, including their grades, skills, and experience, kind of considered equally?
Definitely, I can speak only for Clyde Co, but we definitely don't, look at the name or university that you've been to. So, academics are looked at to check that you meet the requirements, but no, we wouldn't have any, it wouldn't make any impact which university that you attended.
Fab. And then Egil, somebody has asked about how many vacation schemes they should kind of have. Is there an issue with kind of not having done one before? And how much will that affect a training contract application?
Not having done one will not have a negative impact on your application. How many you need depends on you. Sometimes people do one, get an offer, and that's all they need. Sometimes it takes a couple to get the right offer, but it's very it's down to you essentially.
Brilliant, thank you. And then Rosie, somebody has asked, would you still consider applications from mature students that may not have the best grades from school, but have achieved good grades at the Open University and have undertaken work experience in law firms?
Yeah, definitely. I think sometimes if you look at places like LinkedIn, you think everybody's getting a training contract in their second year of uni and that's it. But actually, we find a huge range on the training contract. A lot of people who have done different things beforehand. And I think with reference to that specific example, it sounds like you've got loads of great experience past your grades. So that's what the firm will be looking at, all the recent experience you've had in your university. As mentioned before, firms typically don't look at what university you've been to. So don't let that put you off, and just make the most of all the experience and skills you'll have developed from the work experience that you've done more recently.
Brilliant, thank you. And then Zoe, somebody has asked whether it's a limiting factor to make the firm aware that you're dyslexic or maybe autistic in your application, or should you not mention this? Will it make it will it impact the application at all?
So disclosure does not have any impact on the success of your application, just to reassure everybody. And I think every firm wants to make sure that there's a level playing field for candidates who have disability, neurodiversity. So I would encourage candidates to disclose if they feel comfortable to do so, because that then means that we can adjust the exercises that we're asking them to participate in so that they can perform to their full potential.
Fabulous. Thank you all so much. I'm just going to share the final poll. And while I do so, so the final poll, sorry, is on key takeaways from the session. So please feel free to fill that in. I just wanted to say a massive thank you to our panelists today. Hopefully the audience found that insightful, and we look forward to seeing you at some of our other masterclasses soon. And just a reminder to submit those Law Careers Net Live applications if you're keen on joining us later in the year. I'll give you a couple more seconds to fill in the poll. Lots of you saying that you feel more confident about the application process and that you now understand how to tailor your application better. So I'm just going to end the masterclass there and just thank our panelists. Thank you very much, everybody.